On today's episode of Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols, I spoke with Hillary Husband. She's a 3-time cancer survivor and former St. Jude Children's Research Hospital patient. Now she hopes to use her past to propel her into her future. She's currently working towards a PhD and plans to work in drug development and clinical trial designs to save lives, just like St. Jude saved hers. Today we discuss bullying, body image, and how looks are only skin deep. Welcome, Hillary. Tell me what
Sure.
life was like when you were growing up. Did you have a typical childhood?
I did. I mean, I was sort of like the annoying overachiever kid, had to have like straight A's all the time, very type A
Yeah,
child, right? But I mean, I'm an only child, so maybe that's the weirdest thing about my
me too.
childhood. Yeah, really? Oh,
Yep.
that's so cool. That's cool. So yeah, so that's sort of a different experience, but that's really the only thing that was sort of out of the ordinary. Super healthy, never, I mean, no cavities at the dentist. I mean, I was just I think a
Wow.
pretty good kid. So I mean, really nothing out of the ordinary there. So
Definitely. So, well, that's great. I also did not have any cavities as a kid. I still don't, knock on wood. I don't want to knock
knock
and
on
like
wood.
make it loud, right? Like, um, no,
Fair.
but that's awesome. So you grew up normally, healthy, happy. So did you start dancing when you were young?
Yeah, so I started dance when I was 4. And so what's funny is I didn't really, I mean, I wanted to. I was like, yeah, I want to be a ballerina or whatever. But then I realized I had to wear like leotard and tights. And I was like, that doesn't sound comfy. And so I literally refused for a full year before I went. They had to
You were
bribe
like,
me.
no, not
Yeah, like,
having
no,
it.
this is not the outfit. I want my comfy shorts. And so anyway, but I started dancing at 4 and I danced until, I mean, I still teach dance on the side for fun. But
What
I danced
classes?
until I teach mostly tap. That's my favorite
Yeah.
as far as that goes. But yeah, I danced from 4 until 18 competitively and all that. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. I am not a good dancer, so I took tap dance like classes and hip hop and jazz, and like that was that. I'm like literally almost 6 feet tall, so me trying to dance just not it. We're not
Okay.
coordinated. So, well, I'm glad to hear that you're crushing it at dancing. That's incredible. Not easy.
Thank
So,
you.
props to you. So you're dancing. You had your whole "I don't want to wear a leotard" stage. Don't blame you. And you were just happy, loving life. When did you start noticing that something might be going wrong in your body?
Well, so actually, it was at dance. So I was a freshman in high school, I think, and no, I was, and not I think. Um, that I do that to myself. So I was a freshman in high school, and it was like time came up for auditions for next year's dance line, and so I was at an after school practice, and I was kind of lightheaded, and I had noticed like bruises all down my legs, but it was like right after spring break. I had been up all night playing Guitar Hero. I think I just aged myself. But and so I thought maybe it's probably 'cause I haven't slept enough. I've been eating like trash. Like I'm probably just being, just what it is. Well, and
Yeah.
then it felt like my brain and my body like disconnected, and I almost passed out, right? And so I called my parents and I was like, you need to come get me from dance. Like I don't feel good. And so that was like a major like mom flag on my
Yeah.
mom's side because I mean, I
Good
could be
plan.
growing up, I could have a broken foot and I was still going to be a dance, right? Um, and so she came and got me and sort of went from there.
So what was the next step? I mean, going through your head, you're probably like, I just don't feel right. Like how was that
Right.
to process?
Well, and I really just thought maybe I had a bug or something. And my mom was like, we're going to take you to the ER. And I was literally texting my friends and I was like, this is so embarrassing. My mom's bringing me to the ER. Yeah. I know. In hindsight,
Moms.
it's very funny. I know, moms. And, I was like, I'll be back at school tomorrow. I'll see you guys. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm fine. And so it was that night in the ER that I was actually, well, let me back up. So I got to the local ER and they said, something's really wrong. Your blood counts are crazy. And I was still just sort of like, okay. So because I was so healthy, I never had any experience with ERs and medical issues, except for maybe for dance injuries here and there. But
Good things.
it happened. Good things, yeah, for comparatively.
Yeah.
And so we're going to send you on to a bigger hospital, and I was like, that's not good. And they weren't talking like about it in front of me, and so that's when I started getting suspicious, and I was just like, maybe this is really bad. Um, and so around 3 o'clock that morning, a nurse came in and told me that I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which I didn't even know what that was. Like, that's
Mhm.
how healthy of a kid and normal, I mean, kids shouldn't have to know what
Yeah.
leukemia is, right? Unfortunately, they do. A lot of them do, and I had to learn. So, um, and it really just sort of turned my life upside down. I'm thinking I'm worried about auditions, you
Mm.
know, 5, 6 hours before that, and then all of a sudden they're telling me I have cancer. And again, being a healthy kid, having a healthy family, really nothing traumatic happening in my childhood, I thought everybody with people with cancer died. Cancer's for old people. Cancer doesn't happen to kids. It's just, and that's, I guess, a realization that I had to come to, is that, like, cancer does not discriminate, like, age, I mean, at all. Unfortunately, that's one thing that doesn't discriminate in this world. So,
Mhm.
and so it's, I thought, like, I'm not going to go to school anymore. I can't dance anymore. Like, my life is over.
Oh my God. And you were 14 years old when this happened?
I was 14.
Oh my God. How did you just take that news? I mean, I'm sure, you're probably sitting there and you don't even know what that word means. I
No,
mean, how did they explain it to you?
they just told me, and at the time, they just told me I had a blood cancer. And so it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was just like the ER nurses and said that we're going to
Mhm.
get you talking to, like, the pediatric oncologist tomorrow. And so this is kind of where it got better for me a little bit. So this sweet doctor, he was actually turned out to be a St. Jude doctor, which is where St. Jude comes into the story. So St. Jude has affiliates all over the country where they try to keep the patients as normal of a life as possible, right? So they have lots of affiliates all over the country where they can get treatment close to home. And so little did I know I was at a St. Jude affiliate. And so the doctor came up and he started explaining, you need to go to St. Jude. You need to go to St. Jude. And I said, well, that's like the mathathon thing, right? Like, that's where
Mhm.
all the, I don't need to go there. There's the really sick kids. It's like, I don't think I want to do that. And he started telling me all the reasons why I should go to St. Jude. And then he took a breath, right? So, like, it was like 30 minutes of him just, like, going on and on and on. I know. And he said, and he literally told me, he's like, you have a good cancer. And I was like,
A
have
good
to,
cancer.
right, a good type. So, like, because leukemia, because, and a lot because of St. Jude, in the 1960s, the survival rate was about 4%. And then, like, today it's close to 94, I think maybe 96%
Wow.
patients will survive. And so when they told me that, I was kind of mad. And then they were like, no, this is why it's a good cancer. Like, we can definitely treat you. So that was reassuring to know that I was going
Mhm.
somewhere that knew how to take care of me.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I can't, well, finding that out that I don't even know how to process that. I mean, finding out that news and then, being so young and then you being like, well, what is a good cancer and what does it mean to be treated? I mean,
All right.
what happened with you and your family right after you got that news? Was it like, boom, let's go to St. Jude? Were you going back to school? Like, what happened next?
So, okay, to preface this, I was actually diagnosed on April Fool's Day. So,
Are you kidding?
no, I'm not.
Oh my
So I had to I was telling my friends, I'm like, guys, I got diagnosed with cancer. I'm not coming back to school. And they're like, haha. I'm like, no, not
You're like,
haha,
not
but
haha.
no. So I didn't go back to school. I was in the hospital, and St. Jude arranged a flight for me to go, because it was at St. Jude's in Memphis. I'm based in Louisiana. So they're the local airport. They, within 24 hours, they had me on a plane and at the doors of the St. Jude Hospital. So.
How did you feel when you first got to St. Jude?
Well, so at the point, so again, I was pretty far progressed by the time that I admitted that I didn't feel good and that I was going to go to
Mhm.
the hospital. So I declined, like, my health declined really rapidly from the time I got to the ER and then getting on the plane and getting to St. Jude. And so I just felt like trash, right? Like, I was sick. I had distended spleen. I was, bruised, and I had a headache, and everything just felt horrible. And the plane ride was bumpy, and it was just really uncomfortable. And so I was just done. Right.
Mhm.
And I remember St. Jude picked us up at the airport and brought us to the hospital, and they wheeled me in, and there was a security guard that approached me, and he said, "You must be Hillary. We've been expecting you."
Oh,
And,
I
like,
got chills.
I know, and the security guard said that, and, like, I had literally been bounced around to 2 hospitals by this point, and they were just sort of, like, shoving me around. And I mean, hospitals are busy, and you don't really feel like you're important to anybody there. You're just like another patient, part of their day. But when the security guard approached me and said that, I was like, they're gonna be good to me here. They're gonna take care of me. And my mom would back this up. Like, there was just this, like, burden lifted off of our shoulders. And we were swarmed by all these sweet nurses that were like, here, eat cookies, have these, we're so sorry, and there was nurses on me, and then there was like people who sat down and explained the whole process to my mom. They did some blood work, they made me to the hospital. I got to order like room service. It was just like,
As a
I'm like,
kid, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Exciting.
and so I spent I think it was about a week that I was an inpatient, right when I got there. So
Wow. Well, at least, I'm sure that was the most difficult. I can't even imagine what that was like for you or your mom going through that. But the fact that, St. Jude is so welcoming and that you could order, a room service and still try to find ways to smile going through all that awful, oh, I can't even imagine. So while all this was going on, were you doing school from the hospital?
right. So what happened? So after the first week or so, we got over the shock, and
Hmm.
my doctor sat down with me and asked me what my concerns were. Well, aside from the fact I was tired of throwing up and I was concerned about losing my hair, she's like, can't help you with the hair thing, but we can fix the vomiting. I said, cool. I thought it's a pretty good deal. And so I was like, well, am I going to get to go back to school? How does this work? So St. Jude has a full out school program in the bottom level of the hospital. And they gave me a master's level accredited tutor, worked with me 3 days a week. His name was Dennis, and we're still in touch. He's like the coolest guy ever. But he contacted my school, like got my books shipped to the hospital, so I didn't have to worry about that.
Hmm.
Um, and then he corresponded with my teachers so that I was keeping up with my classmates. So those 3 hours a week, and it was I mean, obviously, I still had homework, I still had stuff, and it was actually a little bit of a sense of normalcy.
Hmm.
So I kind of appreciated having that sense of normalcy and still having that in common with my peers.
I'm sure that normalcy probably kind of kept you going, kept you on a schedule and
Yes.
communicating with your peers. So, with your peers and your friends, more importantly, how was your relationship with them when all this was going on?
Well, and keeping in mind that we're all like 14 and 15 years old, and so there were some.
It's a difficult age.
It wasn't. It was anyway, and so my friends were some. Most of them were just scared, right? A lot the ones
Mhm.
that were close to me were just scared, and then some of them were like, "Is it contagious?" Am I gonna? I'm like, "No." Like literally,
Oh,
you just don't have any idea,
hmm.
and so some people really thought it was contagious, and so that was kind of an uncomfortable um,
Yeah.
situation for a while. And I was like, "I promise, here's some literature to read." I didn't say literature when I was 14. I'm 27 now, but I was like, "Here, read this. I promise it's not." And St. Jude gave me some resources to like help dispel
Yeah.
some of those weird assumptions. But
Conversations. Yeah.
and a lot of them were really great, and a lot of them, jumped right in and were like sending me little care packages and were
Hmm.
trying to come visit. I mean, again, doing what they could at 14 and 15. They didn't have cars or whatever to come see me, but
Yeah.
some of them were really great, and some of them were a lot of them just backed out, like just completely ghosted, I guess is what you would call it now, right? So, and I don't really fault them for that necessarily, because I mean, it was just a really hard thing for anybody to process at that age. And I mean,
Mhm.
nobody really should have to, but
Oh. How did that make you feel when your friends were, quote, like ghosting you?
I guess
Okay.
as much as you're there for your friends when you're again early high school, I kind of I felt it was lonely. I mean, I was very much isolated. As much as St. Jude is awesome and does everything they can to connect you with other teenagers and have prom and school and all the things that they try to make as normal as possible, like you're still isolated and going through something that's and you can't even really explain to people, and if they're not even trying to understand, it's painful. I mean, it's um and at the same time trying to be understanding of how they feel about it, and understanding that they're um going through it too. I mean, going through something different, like processing their friend getting a terminal, a really serious disease.
Mm,
So I tried to be understanding, but also it was also pretty painful.
I'm sure. And so you're going through all this and you're feeling alone and isolated. I mean, how was your mental health through all this, being on treatment and
So the first time I got pretty I got pretty mad. Like, so, and my mom was a super great, help and all that. So I was really upset. I was really mad. I was scared at first, and I realized St. Jude was going to be okay. Was going to take care of me. I was going to be fine. Um, uh, I was I was really mad maybe the first like month or two. My
Mhm.
mom finally one day, I was just wallowing in bed every day, and I wanted the lights off. I wanted it cold. I wanted to be under the blankets. So I guess I went through like a little stage of depression. I mean, maybe not like full blown, but I was going through it, right? And my
Mhm.
mom, she said, Hillary, get up and come look out the window. And we were at the housing that St. Jude provided for us for free. And I looked out the window and there were all these little bald kids, like cute, like 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds, which is horribly sad if you think about it too hard. But they were just on trikes. They were like crashing into each other, rolling on the ground, like punching each other. I mean, just being,
Being
just being
kids.
kids. And she said, they have the same thing you have. And if they can be down there doing that, you've got to light a fire. You've got to figure out a way to live through this. Not survive it, but live through this. And so she was a really big supporter, but it was still a lot of really the hardest thing. Being at St. Jude was fine because I know.
Sorry.
I know, no, it's emotional. And my mom she was such a hero for me, because she never she said, be sad, but then get up and keep going. Like, you're allowed to feel it, feel all of it, but then get up and proceed, like keep going with your life. Um, and it's great. St. Jude I didn't really ever feel like isolated, or I felt so, they were my people. Like, St. Jude is my people, right? And so seeing a kid with a weird tube coming out of somewhere, or no hair, or no eyebrows, or any number of odd things that you would probably like look twice at in Walmart or at Kroger or wherever. But that was just like, oh, that's just Joe, or that's just whoever. And the hard part was when I would have to go when I would go back. I say have to when I would go back home and have to deal with I guess being so different and my body looking so different. And that was the body image was really the biggest thing, I think, for me the first go around. So
So, how was that experience? I know you mentioned like, oh, that's just Joe, and you saw
yeah,
past all those, past those things that a lot of people unfortunately can't see past, and so your mind is open because suddenly that's
yeah.
kind of become your new reality. But going back home, how was that whole experience?
It made me look like high school can be brutal, right? People can be so mean over such silly things, and it made me think twice about the way, I mean, I treated people before, right? And it made me think about, like that's a person, you don't know their story, you don't know my story. And so it's not fair for anybody to be treated differently because of something they can't help, especially something they can't help, right? And even things they can help, we should just be kind. If we There's no reason to be ugly, right? And going through that, and making friends with people, and being a person that looked different. And I mean, I had from steroids, I had a moon face, like this big puffy face. I had no hair, and I held on to like my last few hairs, so I had like a very biker look with like a bandana and like 5 strings of hair like going down to my back. So I mean,
Oh,
it wasn't a good. I mean, I wasn't, again, I was holding on to a lot of things, but um, and being somebody that got looked at funny in the store or whatever, and I realized that there were kids in my school that I had not even noticed that had been
mm,
going through something very similar, and that I had been contributing to that, and so that was a really big perspective change and wake up call for me,
oh,
and it's something I carry with me today
I'm
still.
sure. Oh, I can't imagine just, going through those things. And not only are you fighting for your life, but, you might be dealing with bullies. I mean, were you bullied because of, the differences and,
It was mostly, funny enough, it was mostly by people who didn't know me, right? So if people took the time to know me, or they knew me before and stuck with me, then those were my people. Again, those were people who were, you have to wear a mask to school because your immune system is really low, almost none. It's like, well, we're going to wear masks with you. So there were a few, because I would get picked on for that. It's like, well, why are you wearing a mask? Are you sick? Are you contagious? It came back to that again. But it was mostly people who didn't know me and didn't really know my story. I started wearing wigs to try to blend in a little bit more. And then people were like, why are you wearing a wig? And it just like loudly pointing it out in front of people. And so it kind of, I mean, it was rough, but it made me grow a backbone. I mean,
Mhm.
the hair was the biggest thing, I think, because that's sort of the biggest flag that's saying something's wrong with you, you're sick, you're different. Right. And so when I got the wig, I mean, my parents like went all out sacrifice to make sure I had like the nicest wig that looked the closest thing to my hair before. And I still am very grateful to them for that. Because it was not, I mean, it was a hardship for them to like make that happen. And then to be picked on because people could notice that it was a wig. And my body was changing so much. I was fluctuating like 20 pounds up and down throughout high school. I went from like 110 to 170 pounds in high school at 5'4", right? So
Mhm.
just my body image was just complete. But, it also came in the form of, when I was even like in Memphis around the hospital, like, or traveling, wigs are itchy, wigs are uncomfortable. And when you're riding in a car for 8 hours, you don't want to have the wig on. And so when you pop into a gas station to go to the bathroom, I would usually just grin and bear it. Like, I look funny. I'm just going to keep my head down and go in. I was told I went into the wrong bathroom because I looked like a boy. I was, I was mistaken for a boy a lot. So I started only wearing like pink, like girly colors because it was just really hurtful, to be, I mean, I don't know. It was tough, and people would stare and people would pull their kids away from you. And I'm like, just ask me. Like, I will talk to you
Yeah.
all about cancer awareness and that your kid could get it too. And then also, kind of being around peers, like when we would go places, even when I started wearing my hair short, people would look at me funny. And, I looked at them, I'm just like, we could be friends. Like in a different scenario, like you and I could be friends. Like if you knew who I am inside, like I also love, you know, Kendra Scott
Everything you
earrings
do.
and like all the same teenager things, all the same college girl things that you love, I also love. But you wouldn't know that because you're looking at me how I look right now because I'm going through something. And that's not fair, right?
No. Yeah, that's a body image, and people always compare themselves to other people, and it's disgusting. And it's like, you don't know what someone's going through. I mean, you could be, the most beautiful person in the world and be the most insecure,
Yeah,
or like looks are all external, and
right.
that's what people forget. And I think, given this time and age that you and I both live in of social media, and little
Mm.
kids are comparing themselves, and I'm like, oh my God, like be a little kid. Like don't like what is like I don't get it,
No,
and especially you going through this and you're literally fighting for your life, and you're just like, this is who I am, like love it or don't, like this is me and I'm not ashamed. And that is
right.
so powerful and strong. I mean, what advice do you have for kids who, maybe they're at St. Jude, or maybe they have terminal cancer? What advice do you have for them, or even if they're just different?
Yeah. I think what I've learned, so having been through this a few times and different stages of my life, when people are ugly like that, when people are rude or exclusionary or anything like that, make you feel worse about yourself because of how you look or how you are, it says more about them than it says about you, right? So it usually comes from their insecurity. So either they have to feel like they have to put other people down to make themselves feel better, and again, that's on their character, not yours, right? Also, they just, you have to know that within yourself you have everything that you need to be, and to be the best you that you can be, and they're obviously not able to do that themselves, right? So just know that, like, um it makes you a better person on the inside, right? And so you just have to own it and just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I wish somebody would have told me sooner. So like I started calling people out. So if that helps,
Good for
if you,
you.
because I got into my 20s and I was still going through the cancer thing, and I remember like being laughed at in McDonald's on the way to somewhere. So a group of high school boys were like, and so I walked over there and I was like, "What do you think is funny? Like, can we talk about this? Like, I have cancer and this is what I look like." And they were just dumbfounded. And I just, so if you have the guts, call them out on it. It's like, why are you I
Yeah.
mean, you feel really powerful, like you're just, and I'm like, have this discussion and they will usually back off and they probably won't do it again. I mean, hopefully not. So I mean, those are my biggest things, is just know that it's, you just own it and you just get through it, and it's going to make you you already are a beautiful person. It's going to make you an even more beautiful person on the inside. And that's really what counts. Um, I find too, and I'll just say this too, that, because coming out on the other side of it, it will end. Like, you will eventually find your people and you will thrive. And then you're going to be a person that other people can feel like they can talk to. Right. So when they're going through something hard. And so I found that to be true. As I have friends whose parents were diagnosed with cancer, or they were, in your 20s, sometimes there's certain cancers that are more common. And so I have friends who are like peers of mine now going through what I went through as a teenager. And so it gives you the ability to empathize in a deeper way with people. So there's definitely benefits that those bullies are never going to get.
I'd never be able to take away from you. Well, you are a beautiful person inside and out. And,
You.
now you're just crushing it. You're working towards your PhD at Louisiana Tech. So, what do you hope to do with this aspect of your life?
Well, so being at St. Jude really inspired me. Like, I didn't know anything about, again, I was very sheltered, very healthy, very normal, very small town girl. Like, I'm going to be a pharmacist or a teacher or something, like, I just, like, I don't really know.
Mhm.
And so, but being at St. Jude, you see all this high tech, whatever. So that's why I decided to pursue science. And that comes with its own stigmas, being a female in science, but that's for another day, right? Um,
Story for another time.
story for another time, but that's a whole other different kind of stigma. But so I really felt like St. Jude and then the medical community and science community in general did so much for me to be able to have the quality of life that I have now, all the treatments, all this, the way they treated the side effects, the way they took care of me, St. Jude, and then also all the scientists that made those technologies available, right? I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to give back to that. And so um, I feel like because I love science and I'm decently good at it, I hope for this point. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I think you're doing pretty great. So,
yeah, so thanks. And so I want to be able to kind of contribute to that community, that so maybe that somebody down the road can have a better quality of life or have a life at all, because of something that I contributed to that broader community that helped me so much.
of course. So, with that being said, what would your dream job be when you're done with
Hmm.
school?
Well, I usually say working at St. Jude because they do a lot of really great stuff, and I actually got to work there last summer, which was really fun. In a lab, I got to do some. So what I do pharmacokinetic modeling, which means that I know it's a big word. I
Whoa.
mathematic. I make math models of how drugs move through the body and clear and do all these things. So it's able to help physicians and researchers make predictions for how drugs are going to behave. So really, what I really want to be a part of is probably clinical trial design, like either at like a drug company. I want to be in oncology though. I definitely want to be somewhere where I can affect the oncology pipeline and make cancer treatments better and less miserable. It's still pretty
Definitely.
crude, right? The chemotherapy is pretty rough and it hasn't
I would
changed that
imagine.
much in the past, 20 years. And a lot of it's thanks to St. Jude that it has, but it still needs a lot of work and you can make a lot of impact just by one discovery in oncology. And that's, I think, what would get me out of bed every day.
That's incredible. So, speaking of getting out of bed, a few things with that. So, what kept you motivated when you were in the hospital every day?
Right. So, I had three separate diagnoses. As I'm coming up, I'm answering your question. I'm just going about a roundabout way to doing it, I promise. So, the first one was 14. The second time I was 18. I got a different diagnosis of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And then I relapsed the third time when I was 20. And so at this point, they're like, clearly just chemo and, what we've been doing is not going to keep it away. And so we have to do a bone marrow transplant. So I was in the hospital for 42 days, I believe, 42 days. Um, and you're really just stuck in a bed, right? You're in an isolated unit because you literally, when you have a bone marrow transplant, your immune system gets totally wiped out. Like you have no way to fight disease. You pretty much can't make your own blood. And until your donor graft takes and starts making it for you, you're pretty vulnerable. So they have you isolated. And I mean, there was a couple other people my age on the floor on the unit. We couldn't see each other, but we had like walkie talkies that we distributed like through the nurses,
Mhm.
like secret underground, right? Um,
Oh my God.
I know it was ridiculous. We had so much fun. And we would coordinate our walks. So they would let us walk around, like laps around the floor. And so we would coordinate, well, I'm going to walk clockwise and you're going to walk counterclockwise. And then every time we cross, we can say hello. And then we can continue the conversation. We literally would. And the nurses started catching on and they're just like, I'm just going to turn a blind eye because, I mean, your guys are 20
Yep.
and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but it was like kind of a fun game, right? And so you find the little things that kind of keep you going. I read a lot. I was on a lot of medicine, so I forgot a lot of the books I read. Um, Watched every Adam Sandler movie that was ever made. But then, also they have physical therapy. So it's important to keep moving, right? So like
Mhm.
your body's not made to lay in bed for 42 days. Like a
No.
lot of things can go bad. Your body's already going through a lot. And so let's give it all the help it can get to get better, right? Um, and so I figured out, or actually another patient who had just gotten out of transplant told me that 11 laps around the transplant floor is 1 mile. And I was like, that's reasonable. I mean, so I would take my IV pole and my little house slippers and I would walk around the floor 11 times a day. And so the PT people thought it was like the physical therapy, that is, thought it was the best thing in the world. So they started printing out certificates for me. And it said,
Oh,
congratulations, you walked a mile. And so you have this big window. So the transplant unit at St. Jude is just like incredible. And they have like the entire wall is just like a window to this beautiful, like they literally created this like glitter garden. And if you could ever go see it, like look it up. It's like out the window at the bone marrow transplant. You either see the river, like the Mississippi River on one side, or you can see this like beautiful scene they set for you. But they started putting the certificates up on my window. And
oh,
so I had this doctor that came in, and he was a fellow, so he was like in his residence. Yeah, no, he's past residency. He was specializing, and he was my buddy. He came in, and he said, and he knows I'm competitive, right? So I was a competitive dancer, and he said, "I bet you." He's like, "You've been walking all these miles. I bet you can't walk a marathon while you're here." And I'm like, "Well, now I have to." So I did, and so I started keeping track. And then on the last day, so this is one of my favorite stories, like of all time. On the last day, but I was going to make 26, right? It was close to
mhm.
the end of my time there. Some days I didn't feel good. So some days I didn't walk, depending on what the stage of the transplant was. And so I rounded my last lap. I was going to make the point two. I was going to do the 26 and the point two just to prove a point, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of got around to the nurses, I guess, that this was going on. And so they had contacted like all of my team that had ever taken care of me in these three different diagnoses. And they were in what we called the bubble, which was like the window to the outside from the isolation unit. And during my last lap, which tells you how slow I was, right? So I'm walking around the last lap, and they had set up a finish line and signs and cameras, and like everybody who had ever taken care of me was in that, like in the outside the bubble, like cheering me on. And so that was just like such a culmination. I was finishing my transplant. I was finishing my marathon that somebody dared me to do. That I think it really did help my treatment. And I was looking out the window at all these people who had got me to that point, you know, and they were the reason that I was still alive and that I was able to have the transplant and complete the transplant and go on. I know. So
Got me
I know
again.
that's why I always
Oh.
talk about. I mean, I always mention that because it really was such like a pivotal moment for me. It's like this treatment's gonna work. I finished it. I survived it. These are all the people that helped me do it. It was just very sentimental, like very symbolic to me.
Wow. Wow. I'm sure when you crossed that finish line, it was just a whole range of emotions.
Yes,
And
for
I'm sure
sure.
even
And
today, same thing.
yeah, there's a picture that circulated on the internet of the picture of me crossing the finish line with my arms up and my little, again, in my house slippers and my PJs basically. But it's I still look at it all the time, and I go look at all the little faces in the window and remember um my journey and all the things that all these people helped me through.
That's so powerful. So now, not only have you had all these people help you through your life, but you have met the love of your life and you are planning an incredible wedding.
Yes.
How exciting is that? Like, did you ever, like, were like, am I going to get to this point? And here you are, 27, exciting?
Yes. So I remember like certain times, like, you get caught up in being in treatment and just trying to get by, right? So I'm trying to finish school. I'm doing calculus from a hospital bed, like teaching myself. I'm like, ugh, that I would not recommend. But I'm having to like lean on all these people to help. And I remember the day that it was in transplant, those 42 days. And I was like just sitting there thinking, I'm like, I'm gonna feel better one day. Like this, like it was just a weird realization. I guess I just never thought about it. Like I'm gonna feel normal again. I'm gonna feel healthy. I'm not gonna have any weird pains. I'm not gonna have any weird. I mean, So I was just like, I'm gonna feel like a normal person again, like I used to, and I do now. And it's special that I try not to forget that, right? So I try not to take it for granted. I know I do sometimes. Um, but I'm really, really just grateful is the only word that comes to mind, really. I mean, I know that I didn't do this on my own. I know that it took um, my parents, kicking my butt and telling me to get out of bed and don't feel sorry for yourself. You've got a lot
Yeah.
going for you. You have all these people who love you. You have all this support. So people who are mean to you don't matter. Um, and and just telling me that I can do whatever I want. Like you can do anything you set your mind to. And I mean, I was even able to dance while I was on treatment. And like, that's just crazy to me that I was literally crazy. I don't
Yeah.
um, and so I'm grateful for the fact that I did get all these milestones that I didn't know. Like there were a lot of moments in my life where I didn't know that I was going to be able to graduate high school, graduate college, go to grad school, get engaged, get married, buy a car. Like that was a big grown up thing for me. Right. So,
Of course. Big
it,
milestone.
yeah, and so all these milestones that I get to have, and that's another thing that really fires me up to give back to St. Jude. Like number one, however I can do fundraise, whatever, like anything they say, like I will fundraise. You want me to walk around with an accordion and dance a jig, like I will do whatever if it's going to raise money for St. Jude, period. Like but also like in my science career, like I want to be able to give back, and so that's what really fires me up, is just wanting to give other kids and other people, not just kids. I mean, contributing to cancer research. I mean, more than just children and more than just American kids, like, right. I mean, because St. Jude shares their research really with the whole world. And so I just really, that's another thing that really fires me up, is just wanting to give the milestones that I get to have to more people.
So, looking back at everything, what does St. Jude just mean to you?
It was a second home. It is a second home. It still is. It was a safe space. It was such a safe space. To the point where, I tell people this all the time, like the hardest times in my treatment was when I was back and forth to St. Jude and home a lot. Because I could settle in at St. Jude and feel accepted. I could feel understood. Like no one else can understand it like your cancer buddies can, right? That's what and a lot of us still keep up because of that. But actually there's two former St. Jude patients in my wedding with me, which is like, it'll be fun. But that's like that, those friendships have lasted. So they've given me a lot of my literally closest friends. And it's a second home, and it gives me a purpose. Like, again, being able to give back in the way that I can gives me a purpose. And even when I go back now for like the life study, so I go back and they study how the side effects have affected me and how like long term these different things affect patients. And so there's not a lot of people leave St. Jude that work there, right? So like it's an amazing place. And so I got my wedding dress, and I was like, I got to show my nurses, and they all like boohooed like they're my grandma or something, and so like they actually, like, I think one of my nurses actually cried more than my mom did seeing it, so like, and so like,
Wow.
it's really just like coming to like a big family reunion every time I get to go back. So I really look forward to it.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, you are just an inspirational woman, and I barely know you, and I'm really proud of you and
Thanks.
everything that you're doing to inspire kids and let them know that, hey, you know what, you can get through this and you can become successful and follow your dreams. So
Absolutely.
thank you for being on today. Do you have anything else that you might want to add?
I don't think so. I mean, this has been so great getting to talk to you, and I don't feel like you get to talk about that part about, how you think about the patients getting better, right? And we worry about the patients getting better, but you don't necessarily hear about what they go through as far as the struggles with their peers and, the outside world. So I think that's important to acknowledge and to encourage people through. So thank you for giving not just me, but so many people the platform to talk about how talk about that, right? Talk about how no one's alone in going through that. Most everybody's experienced something like that. So some sort of bullying or discrimination. So you're awesome. So thank you for giving me everybody a platform to do that.
Yes.
So be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest.
To show your support for St. Jude families during Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, visit www.stjude.org/walkrun and sign up to fundraise for this national fitness event happening in cities across the country. Events like this ensure that families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, because all a family should have to worry about is helping their child live. Let's cure childhood cancer together.